It is time for Chapter 19 in To Kill a Mockingbird. We are at the trial of Tom Robinson. We just heard Mayella talk about what happened, and it seems nearly impossible that Tom could have done it. She seems to have been hit by someone who was left-handed, and Tom Robinson absolutely could not use his left hand. He's handicapped, he's crippled. It was caught in a cotton gin when he was a kid. It's 12 inches shorter than his other arm, and there's just no way he could have done what she is accusing him of. So let us continue on and see what happens. Thomas Robinson reached around, ran his finger under his arm right and lifted it, left arm and lifted it. He guided his arm to the Bible, and his rubber-like left hand sought contact with the black binding. As he raised his right hand, the useless one slipped off the Bible and hit the clerk's table. He was trying again when Judge Taylor growled, "That'll do, Tom." Tom took the oath and stepped into the witness chair. Atticus very quickly induced him to tell us. Tom was 25 years of age. He was married with 3 children. He'd been in trouble with the law before. He once received 30 days for disorderly conduct. "Well, it must have been disorderly," said Atticus. "What did it consist of?" "Got in a fight with another man. Tried to cut me." "Did he succeed?" "Yes, sir, a little. Not enough to hurt. You see, And Tom moved to lift his left shoulder. "Yes," said Atticus. You were both convicted?" "Yes, sir. I had to serve because I couldn't pay the fine. Other fellow paid his'n." Dill leaned across me and asked Jem what Atticus was doing. Jem said Atticus was showing the jury that Tom had nothing to hide. "Were you acquainted with Mayella Violet Ewell?" asked Atticus. "Yes, sir. I had to pass her place going to and from the field every day." "Whose field?" "I picks for Mr. Linkthy's." "Were you working cotton in November?" "No, sir. I works in his yard fall and winter time. I works pretty steady for him all year round. He's got a lot of pecan trees and things." "You say that you had to pass the Ewell place to get to and from work. Is there any other way to go?" "No, sir. None's I know of." "Tom, did she ever speak to you?" "Why, yes, sir. I tip my hat when I go by. One day she asked me to come inside the fence and bust up a shiffer rope for her." "And when did she ask you to chop up the shiffer rope?" "Mr. Finch, it was way last spring. I remember it because it was chopping time and I had my hoe with me. I said I didn't have nothing but this hoe, but she said she had a hatchet. So she give me the hatchet and I broke up the shiffer rope. She said, 'I reckon I have to give you a nickel, won't I?' And I said, 'No, ma'am, there ain't no charge,' and then I went home. Mr. Fitch, that was way last spring, way over a year ago." "Did you ever go on the place again?" "Yes, sir." "When?" "Well, I went lots of times." Judge Taylor instinctively reached for his gavel, but let his hand fall. The murmur below us died without his help. "Under what circumstances?" "Please, sir?" "Why did you go inside the fence lots of times?" Tom Robinson's forehead relaxed. "She'd call me in, sir. Seemed like every time I passed by yonder she'd have some little something for me to do. Chopping kindling, or toting water for her. She watered them little red flowers every day." "Were you paid for your services?" "No, sir. Not after she offered me a nickel the first time. I was glad to do it. Mr. Ewell didn't seem to help her none. Neither did the children, and I knowed she didn't have no nickels to spare." "And where were the other children?" "Oh, they was always around all over the place. They'd watch me work. Some of 'em sat in the window." "And would Miss Mayella talk to you?" "Yes, sir, she talked to me." As Tom Robinson gave his testimony, it came to me that Mayella must have been the loneliest person in the world. She was even lonelier than Boo Radley. who had not been out of the house in 25 years. When Atticus asked had she any friends, she seemed to not know what he meant, and then she thought he was making fun of her. She was as sad, I thought, as what Jem called a mixed child. White people wouldn't have anything to do with her because she lived among pigs, and Negroes wouldn't have anything to do with her because she's white. She couldn't live like Mr. Dolphus Raymond, who preferred the company of Negroes because she didn't own a riverbank and she wasn't from a fine old family. Nobody said that's just their way about the Yules. Maycomb gave 'em Christmas baskets and welfare money and back of its hand. Tom Robinson was probably the only person who was ever decent to her. She said that he took advantage of her, and when she stood up and looked at him, she did it as if he were dirt beneath her feet. Did you ever, Atticus interrupted my meditations, at any time go on the Yule property? Did you ever set foot on the Yule property without an express invitation from one of them? Oh, no, sir, Mr. Finch, I never did. I wouldn't do that, no, sir. Atticus sometimes said that the one way to tell whether a witness was lying or telling the truth was to listen rather than watch. So I applied his test. Tom denied it 3 times in one breath, but quickly, quietly, with no hint of whining in his voice, and I found myself believing him in spite of him protesting too much. He seemed to be a respectable Negro, and a respectable Negro would never go up into somebody's yard of his own violation. Tom, what happened to you on the evening of November 21st of last year? Below us the spectators drew a collective breath and leaned forward. Behind us the Negroes all did the same. Tom was a velvet Negro, not shiny, not soft black velvet, but soft black velvet, and the whites of his eyes shone in his face, and when he spoke we saw flashes of his teeth. If he'd been whole, he would have been a fine specimen of a man. Mr. Finch, he said, I was going home as usual that evening, and when I passed the Yule place, Miss Mayella were on the porch, like she said she were. It seemed real quiet, and I didn't quite know why. I was studying why, just passing by, when she says for me to come here and help her a minute. Well, I went inside the fence, and I looked around for some kindling to work on, but I didn't see none, and she says, No, I got something for you to do in the house. The old door's off its hinges and fall's coming on pretty fast. I said, You got a screwdriver, Miss Mayella? And she said, Sure had. Well, I went up the steps. She motioned me to come inside. I went in the front room and looked at the door. I said, Miss Mayella, this door looked all right. I pulled it back and forth, and those hinges was all right. And when she shut the door in my face. Mr. Finch, I was wondering why it was so quiet, and it come to me that there weren't a child in the place, not a one of them. And I said, Miss Mayella, where the children? And Tom's black velvet skin had begun to shine, and he ran his hand over his face. I say, where are the children? He continued, and she says, she was laughing, sort of. She says that they all gone to town to get ice cream. She said, she took me a slap year to save the 7 nickels, but I done it, and they all gone to town. Tom's discomfort was not from the humidity. What did you say then, Tom? Asked Atticus. I said something like, Why, Miss Mayella, that's right smart of you to treat 'em. And she said, You think so? I don't think she understood what I was thinking. I meant it was smart of her to save like that, and nice of her to treat 'em. I understand you, Tom. Go on, said Atticus. Well, I said I must be going. I couldn't do nothing for her. She said, Oh, yes, I could. And I asked what, and she says to just step on the chair yonder and get that box down from on top of the chifforobe. Not the same chifforobe you busted up? Asked Atticus. The witness smiled. Nah, sir, another one. Most as tall as the room. So I done what she said, and I was just reaching when the next thing I know, she grabbed me around the legs. She just grabbed me around the legs. Mr. Finch, she scared me so bad I hopped down and turn the chair over. That was the only furniture stirred in the room, Mr. Finch, when I left. I swear before God. And what happened after you turned the chair over? Tom Robinson had come to a dead stop. He glanced at Atticus, and then at the jury, and then at Mr. Underwood sitting across the room. Tom, you are sworn to tell the whole truth. Will you tell it? Tom ran his hand nervously over his mouth. What happened after that? Answer the question, said Judge Taylor. 1/3 of his cigarette had vanished. Mr. Finch, I got down off of that chair and turned around, and she sort of jumped on me. Jumped on you violently? No, sir, she hugged me. She hugged me around the waist. This time, Judge Taylor, the gavel came down with a bang, and as it did, the overhead lights went on in the courtroom. Darkness had not come, but the afternoon sun had left the windows, and Judge Taylor quickly restored order. Then what did she do? The witness swallowed hard. She reached up and kissed me side of the face. She says she never kissed a grown man before, and she might as well kiss a Negro. She says what her pa do to her don't count. And she says, kiss me back. And I said, Miss Mayella, let me out of here, and tried to run, but she got her back to the door, and I had to push her. I didn't want to harm her, Mr. Finch, and I say, let me pass. But just when I say it, Mr. Ewell yonder hollered through the window. And what did he say? Tom Robinson swallowed again, and his eyes widened. Something not fitting to say, not fitting for these folks and children to hear. What did he say, Tom? You must tell the jury what he said. Tom Robinson shut his eyes tight. He says, you goddamn whore, I'll kill you. And then what happened? Mr. Finch, I was running so fast I didn't know what happened. Tom, did you rape Mayella Ewell? I did not, sir. Did you harm her in any way? I did not, sir. Did you resist her advances? Mr. Finch, I tried. I tried to, without being ugly to her. I didn't want to be ugly. I didn't want to push her or nothing. It occurred to me that, in their own way, Tom Robinson's manners were as good as Atticus's. Till my father explained it to me later, I did not understand the subtlety of Tom's predicament. He could not have dared strike a white woman under any circumstances and expect to live long, so he took the first opportunity to run. A sure sign of guilt. Tom, go back once more to Mr. Ewell, said Atticus. Did he say anything to you? Not anything, sir. He might have said something, but I weren't there. That'll do, Atticus cut him off sharply. And what you did hear, who was he talking to? Mr. Finch, you were talking and looking at Miss Mayella. And then you ran. I sure did, sir. And why did you run? I was scared, sir. And why were you scared? Mr. Finch, if you was a Negro like me, you'd be scared too. Atticus sat down. Mr. Gilmer was making his way to the witness stand, but before he got there, Mr. Link Dees rose from the audience and announced, I just want the whole lot of you to know one thing right now. That boy's worked for me 8 years, and I ain't had a speck of trouble out of him. Not a speck. Shut your mouth, sir. Judge Taylor was wide awake and worn. He was also pink in the face. His speech was miraculously unimpaired by his cigar. Link Dees, he yelled. If you have anything you want to say, you can say it under oath and at the proper time. But until then, you will get out of this room. You hear me? You get out of this room, sir, you hear? I'll be damned if I'll listen to this case again. Judge Taylor looked daggers at Atticus, as if daring him to speak, but Atticus ducked his head and was laughing into his lap. I remembered something he had said about Judge Taylor's ex-cathedra remarks, sometimes exceeding his duties, but that few lawyers ever did anything about him. I looked at Jim, But Jim shook his head. It ain't like one of the jurymen got up and started talking, he said. I think it'd be different then. Mr. Link was just disturbing the peace or something. Judge Taylor told the reporter to expunge anything he happened to have written down after Mr. Finch. If you were a Negro like me, you'd be scared too, and told the jury to disregard the interruption. He looked suspiciously down the aisle and waited. I'd supposed for Mr. Link Deeds to effect total departure, and then he said, "Go ahead, Mr. Gilmer." "You were given 30 days once for disorderly conduct, Robinson?" said Mr. Gilmer. "Yes, sir." "And what the other guy look like when you got through with him?" "He beat me, Mr. Gilmer." "Yes, but you were convicted, weren't you?" Atticus raised his head. "It was a misdemeanor, and it's in the record, Judge." I thought he sounded tired. "Witness will answer, though," said Judge Taylor, just as warily. "Yes, sir, I got 30 days." I knew that Mr. Gilmer would sincerely tell the jury that anyone who was convicted of disorderly conduct could easily have had it in his head to take advantage of Mayella Ewell. That was the only reason he cared. Reasons like that helped. "Robinson, you're pretty good at busting up chiffon-robes and handling with one hand, aren't you?" "Yes, sir, I reckon so." "Strong enough to choke the breath out of a woman and sling her to the floor?" "I never done that, sir." "But you are strong enough to." "I reckon so, sir." "Had your eye on her a long time, hadn't you, boy?" "No, sir, I never looked at her." "Then you were mighty polite to do all that chopping and hauling for her, weren't you, boy?" "I was just trying to help her out, sir." "It was mighty generous of you. You had chores at home after your regular work, didn't you?" "Yes, sir." "Well, why didn't you do them instead of Miss Mayella's?" "Done 'em both, sir." "You must have been pretty busy." "Why?" "Why what, sir?" "Why were you so anxious to do that woman's chores?" Tom Robinson hesitated, searching for an answer. "Looked like she didn't have anybody to help her, like I says." "With Mr. Ewell and 7 children on the place, boy?" "Well, I says it looked like they never help her none." "You did all this chopping and work from the sheer goodness, boy?" "Tried to help her, I says." Mr. Gilmer smiled grimly at the jury. "You're a mighty good fella, it seems. Did all this for not 1 penny." "Yes, sir. Felt right sorry for her. She seemed to try more than the rest of 'em." "You felt sorry for her. You felt sorry for her." Mr. Gilmer seemed ready to rise to the ceiling. The witness realized his mistake and shifted uncomfortably in the chair. But the damage was done. Below us, nobody liked Tom Robinson's answer, and Mr. Gilmer paused a long time to let it sink in. "Now, you went by the house as usual last November 21st, and she asked you to come in and bust up a chiffon robe." "No, sir." "Do you deny that you went by the house?" "No, sir. She said she had something for me to do inside the house." "She says that she asked you to bust up a chiffon robe. Is that right?" "No, sir, it ain't." "Then you say she's lying, boy?" Atticus was on his feet, but Tom Robinson didn't need him. "I don't say she's lying, Mr. Gilmore. I say she's mistaken in her head." To the next 10 questions, Mr. Gilmore reviewed Mayella's version of events. The witness's steady answer was that she was mistaken in her mind. "Did Mr. Ewell run you off the place, boy?" "No, sir, I don't think he did." "Don't think? What do you mean?" "I mean I didn't stay long enough for him to run me off." "You're very candid about this. Why did you run so fast?" "I said I was scared, sir." "If you had a clear conscience, why were you scared?" "Like I says before, it weren't safe for any Negroes to be in a fix like that." "But you weren't in a fix. You testified that you were resisting Miss Ewell. Were you so scared that she'd hurt you? You ran, a big buck like you?" "No, sir, I was scared I'd be in court just like I am now. Scared of arrest? Scared you'd have to face up to what you did? No, sir. Scared I'd have to face up to what I didn't do. Are you being impudent to me, boy? No, sir. I didn't go to be. Well, this was as much as I heard of Mr. Gilmore's cross-examination because Jem made me take Dill out. For some reason, Dill had started crying and couldn't stop. Quietly at first, and then the sobs were heard by several people in the balcony. Jem said it didn't go with him. If I didn't go with him, he'd make me, and Reverend Sock said I'd better go, so I went. Dill and I seemed to be all right that day, nothing wrong with him, but I guess he just hadn't fully recovered from running away. Ain't you feeling good? I asked when we reached the bottom of the stairs. Dill tried to pull himself together as he ran down the south steps. Mr. Linkdees was a lonely figure on the top step. Anything happening, Scout? He asked as we went by. No, sir, I answered over my shoulder. Dill here, he's sick. Come out under the trees, I said. Heat gotcha, I expect. We chose the fattest live oak and we sat under it. It was just him I couldn't stand, Dill said. Who, Tom? Oh, that old Mr. Gilmer doing him that way, talking so hateful to him. Well, Dill, that's his job. Why, if we don't have prosecutors, well, we wouldn't have defense attorneys, I reckon. Dill exhaled patiently. I know all that, Scout. It was the way he said it. It made me sick, just plain sick. He's supposed to act that way, Dill. He was cross. He didn't act that way when... Dill, those were his own witnesses. Well, Mr. Finch didn't act that way to Mayella and old man Ewell when he cross-examined them. The way that man called him boy all the time and sneered at him and looked around at the jury every time he answered. Well, Dill, after all, he's just a Negro. I don't care one speck. It ain't right. Somehow it ain't right to do them that way. Hasn't anybody got any business talking like that? It makes me sick. Well, that's just Mr. Gilmore's way, Dill. He does them all that way. You've never seen him get down and good and down on one yet. Why, well, today Mr. Gilmore seemed to me like he wasn't half trying. They do them all that way. Most lawyers, I mean. Mr. Finch doesn't. He's not an example. Dill, I was trying to grope in my memory for a sharp phrase of Miss Maudie Atkinson's. I had it. He's the same in courtroom as he is on the public streets. It's not what I mean, said Dill. I know what you mean, boy, said a voice behind us. He thought it came from the tree trunk, but it belonged to Mr. Dolphus Raymond. He peered around the trunk at us. You on thin hide. It just makes you sick, doesn't it? And that is the end of the chapter. I don't think ultimately that Scout is prejudiced or hateful towards black people. I think we see that with Calpurnia and how she is and how she wants to go see Calpurnia, go to her house. She likes the church. She just knows that there are certain rules, and it's never struck her to think about it differently. That Mr. Gilmer was calling Tom Robinson boy, that it's felt disrespectful, it's felt condescending. She didn't see it like that. She just saw it like there's a certain way that you talk to kids, there's a certain way that you talk to babies, there's a certain way and a certain tone that you use to talk to Negroes. And, I don't know if she would ever use it like that. She doesn't call Reverend Sykes boy. But the whole thing makes Dill sick. And he is obviously not at all okay with it. And using that tone and any of it. And they run out because Dill is not feeling well and getting upset. And they run into Mr. Dolphus Raymond, who you may remember keeps company with a black woman and has mixed children and drinks. And so they're going to find out a lot. But Tom made a big mistake in his testimony. And he said the reason why he went and he did those chores for Mayella was he felt sorry for her. It seems like a normal thing to say. she didn't get any help. She was the oldest one there. The other kids didn't do anything. Her dad wasn't around to help. And he felt sorry for her. He wanted to be helpful. But as a Negro in the South in the 1930s, you do not feel sorry for someone who is white. They are automatically above you. There is nothing for you to feel sorry about. Okay, so don't forget to do your quiz. Don't forget to get the other quizzes done. And when we come back to the reading, we are going to be meeting Mr. Dolphus Raymond and hearing more about him.